When you're part of Jehovah's Witnesses, there's always that conversation of the fact that they feel as though they have it right because you could go any part of the world and you can have a mutual respect for any of the Jehovah's Witness. Let's say you're from America and you fly to France, you can just meet with the French Jehovah's Witnesses and you can get along with them even if you can't speak the same language. And I always thought that was kind of stupid, even when I was just fully in it. Because when you're when you like if you are part of a community, you're not actually fully connected with each other. So there's a baseline recognition of each other whenever you're part of a community, and it doesn't extend to having close connections. So it's the same with Jehovah's Witnesses. And when you're in a congregation, which is going to be the most tight knit community, that's just the way it's structured. You can already see that it doesn't work out like that. So, how much more internationally? So, I'm sure we've all experienced this, but when you're in a congregation, it's very clicky. And throughout the span of being in Jehovah's Witness, I was in three different congregations. So the first one, when I was growing up, for the most part, up until I was 18, this congregation was it's more like a middle class, upper middle class congregation. So you had a lot of affluent people, and so since this was the congregation I was growing up in, I didn't really feel the effects of how clicky it was because they want all the kids to definitely be part of all the fun stuff that they do. So you'll always get invited out to the different kinds of get-togethers. You'll want to have all the kids playing different games and sports and whatever kind of activities to get them engaged, doing all these Bible studies. Basically, you always feel like you're a part of something unless your family is unreputable. If your family isn't your family basically has a terrible reputation, then you're kind of screwed. You're not going to be involved with anything, and no one's going to really want to talk to you. And so there was one family like that in my first congregation that I was in, and they hardly get invited out to do anything fun, and hardly really talk to them either until I reached a certain age. And that was basically it. Like I wasn't really paying attention to the dynamics of everyone in that congregation, but I always did see that there was basically a group of people who really didn't fit in with the cool kids, let's just say. So they're off to the far back corner to the right of the Kingdom Hall. And then there was, I'm just trying to map this out. I think most people sitting in the middle seats were kind of I think they were mostly like able to intermingle with each other. We had some more other we had, like, the young couples of the congregation. They're all talking amongst each other, and yeah, they're just like different groups of elderly people, different groups of younger people, and then you had the outcasts, and that was basically the first congregation. Then you have the second congregation that I was in, and this one was a little bit more, I would say, on the lower ends financially. So a lot of people, like, there's so much turnover in this congregation because we would always get like new young couple or new young person. They would come into our congregation and then they would leave like within like a year or two or a few months because it's basically very transitory location. You're probably not going to be renting in the properties of that territory for very long. So could start to see how clicky is here, because you would see at first there was a lot of young people, and so all of us younger people were basically just talking amongst each other. It was very easy for me when I basically when I reached 18, I left the Kingdom Hall. Didn't go back. It was my choice. Never got baptized at that time. And then when I was 20 years old, I came back and I decided I wanted to go to this congregation because my friend was going to that congregation. And his there was like a guy in that congregation that I was having a Bible study with. So it was just that much easier. So all of us younger people were basically hanging out with each other. Throughout the years, I did notice that it was a bit more clicky, or maybe perhaps I just noticed it a lot more because I was 20 years old. And you basically had people who were the cool people were basically the ones who were hanging out with particular elders of that congregation. And then you had some of the outcasts who were um some of them were spiritual, but I think they had very just a snappy opinion about things. So because they couldn't keep their mouth reined properly, they weren't able to make friends with others in that congregation. And then you have, the older ones, the elderly, their own little group. And then you had people who were basically, let me try to say this kindly, but just not mentally sound, let's just say. So there are a few of them, and so they had their own little group. And so you could see there's basically just this hierarchy of, if you're not with the cool elder, or if you don't know him very well, then you're not going to be invited out to as many get-togethers. And if you're just a weird person, or if you're not mentally there altogether, then you're just on the lower end. We'll talk to you just to make small talk and just to be polite and just to make you feel included, but we're not really going to spend much time with you. So once again, not really demonstrating this global unity. And then the last congregation I was in, which was absolutely terrible, and I'm glad I didn't spend that much time there before I woke up. It was just the most obvious clicky congregation ever. And the thing that probably pissed me off the most when I was in that congregation is basically this was during that, remember, I can't remember what year it was. Was it like 2018 or 2019 or something, where there was like that grand shuffle of the territories, and so lots of congregations just became smaller, or I should say, a lot of congregations dissolved and joined other congregations so that they could save space, and so the number of um, people in the congregations just ballooned up, and different congregations got dissolved. So the congregation that I was in, basically it was dissolved, and so we were basically split up in the territory. But I was actually in a group, so I was in the Russian group, and so that group got transferred over to a different congregation in a completely different kingdom hall. uh Basically it moved to a different city, and so this congregation was so clicky, and I never actually fit in. So I felt it all. I felt the fitting in part of being in a congregation, to the second one. All the young people just started leaving one by one, and so I started to lose that feeling of fitting in. But I also wasn't an outcast because I knew the cool elder. So it was like a 50-50. And then this third congregation, third and final strike, man, I just could not fit in. It was impossible. So there were a few younger people in the congregation. So it wasn't as if the congregation was just full of older people or just full of younger kids. I think it probably had like a healthy mixture of everything. There's quite a few kids there. There's quite a few young people there. There's quite a few. I There wasn't that many very elderly people. I would say for the most part, it's just young grandparents kind of age group, right? So there's all that mixture. Could not make friends with anyone there, and I I'm not like the biggest social butterfly, which may be part of the reason why I found it more difficult. But I don't think I've ever been at a point in my life where it was so difficult to actually make friends with people in the congregation. So this was very foreign for me. I always thought that just being there should be enough for me to at least have someone I can talk to when I go to the meetings. But it just could not happen there. I tried everything. You go to the meetings and then you just talk to people. You make small congregate conversations with people, and it's happened a few times, but it's never got to the point where I could just hang out with any of them. Keep in mind, I'm talking about people who are the same age as me, so maybe like 1 or 2 years younger than me, or 1 or 2 years older than me, or the exact same age. So it shouldn't have been so much of a problem for me, but I just wasn't accepted. I could see that to the effect with a lot of different people as well. So this was like the one congregation I would say where it felt like people were like the at least, let me just say, at least when I was in other congregations or when I visit other congregations, you could see that there was people who would be mixing with different bubbles, different kinds of cliques. Or you might see other kinds of cliques just kind of like form two bigger bubbles, right? You might see that kind of stuff. But in this one, it was like, it's like you got the elites, man. These elites, basically, they only talk to each other. A couple of them, the younger ones, the older ones, and then the kids all just do whatever. But if you're not in that group, you're just kind of like you're screwed. You're not really yeah, you're not really relevant. And just to hammer this in, the fact that I just could not fit in, I remember this is probably the last get together I ever went to, or at least the last one before I woke up. And it was basically like it was like half the congregation at this guy's backyard. I don't understand how so many of us fit in, but as the night went on, more and more people left. But I it was like a wake up call for me at that moment, because I just couldn't, there's nothing I could do. I could try talking to this person or that person or that person. I just see all of these other folks having these deep conversations, talking about many other things, and I couldn't do that. No matter what, no matter who I talk to, no matter what kinds of things I would talk to them about, it just would not stick. And to top it off, there's like this one exact moment. There's I think it was like 4 or 5 of us sitting in a circle, and there's one guy who was playing I think it was a guitar, and he was just like strumming his instrument, and guys were just talking about playing this musical instrument, playing musical instruments in general, talking about their story about how they were able to learn and notes and all this kinds of stuff. And for me personally, I've never learned how to play a musical instrument. The best thing I ever done was in grade 6 play Amazing Grace, and I've completely forgot it at this point in my life. But I couldn't figure out any point where I could interject. I would try to say some things here and there though, but it was basically completely brushed off. And this was where I really felt like a social outcast. And I don't think I've ever felt that in my entire life. I always felt to some degree people would have a surface level of respect for you, especially in if you're a Jehovah's Witness. Like, I have like a surface level of respect for you when you're trying to make conversation, but it just didn't work. And a few other things with this congregation pissed me off, and so I basically woke up just because of all these other things that were happening to me. And that's kind of why I think this idea of this global unity that they talk about is just nonsense. And I think a lot of people who are XJWs can probably relate to having this level of just this level of loneliness when you're going to the kingdom halls, because you're just going there, you feel like you've worked and you're tired and you have to go to a congregation, and you see all these other people who are just like giving each other hugs and they're just having a blast and they're laughing and all this, and you feel as though you can't be part of that happiness that they seem to be showing. And if you try to talk to them, then they'll kind of just like they kind of just feel like they have to deal with you. And then once they're able to end that short conversation, they'll just move on to somebody else. So I would like to say that that seems to be the complete the blah, blah, blah. That seems to be the complete opposite in my experience after leaving Jehovah's Witnesses, because you're basically like the people who are your friends are basically the people who are your friends. If you don't have any friends, you're not going to have people who are going to put up with you just for the sake of having to. You're just not really going to talk to you. And so if you actually do make friends, they're going to definitely be your friends. Like, basically the thing that binds you together isn't this isn't the number of hours you slave away for the governing body. It's actually going to be common interests. So if you already share common interests, then you're going to want to share those interests with somebody else. You're going to want to spend time with each other, and then you basically just form a bond that way. You might go out and have a few drinks and then get to know the person even more. And it's very easy for you to cultivate a friendship. Might say that depending on where you live, it might be harder for you to actually make a friend, but that basically involves, I would say, if you have any kind of hobby, you would want to, like, for instance, you play volleyball or something, try joining a volleyball club, and then you can just meet like-minded individuals. Because if you're a sports person, then chances are you'll probably have the same interests as others who are doing that particular sport. Same with any other kind of hobby. If you're going hiking or bouldering, you're probably going to meet people who have similar interests. If you don't meet someone there, do something else and you'll find someone. But there's so many avenues in which you can meet different people, because you're actually allowed to do those things. If you're a Jehovah's Witness, you got no time for nothing. And even if you did have time for anything, you're not even allowed to make friends with people who aren't part of their cult. So kind of sucks. You're basically constrained to a bunch of people who may or may not want to be your friends. And the only way for you to meet other people is if you're lucky enough to get invited to a get together. And then when you go to that get together, hopefully somebody else brings someone from another congregation. And again, another hopefully they actually want to talk to you. And hopefully when they do talk to you, you actually share a common interest in order to be friends. So that's a lot of hoops you got to jump over just to actually make a genuine connection with someone. And so that is the point of contention when it comes to having this idea of global friendship or global unity. It's just not there. It's artificial. The only thing binding you together is this obligation to uphold this idea that you have global unity. And so you're only really just tolerating that person unless you actually genuinely like that person. So it's very few and far between where you'll end up going somewhere internationally and you'll actually make genuine connections. The only time that really happens is if you get love bombed so hard that a bunch, like, you get introduced with so many different people that one of them actually ends up being someone you actually want to hang out with. Like, that's really the only way it happens. And I can say that it sort of happened to me because I have done traveling before. I'll probably save that for another video. I do have a funny story about it too. But basically, yeah, you basically, when you travel and you're getting chauffeured everywhere, you're being taken to all these different get-togethers, you're meeting so many different people that you have an opportunity to meet someone who you might be interested in just getting to know even further. But that's only that. If other than that, if you're traveling by yourself and you go to a Kingdom Hall, I don't know. They may say hello just out of politeness because you're just a face that they've never seen. But other than that, you are basically on your own. You got to do your own thing. Not really global unity. It's just a global, let's actually uphold this idea because it is one of the things we want to be proud of, kind of unity. That was very weird to say. But that is it for the XJW experience. Came to the end. I want to thank you very much for listening to this, and I will catch you next time.